My daughter-in-law humiliated me at my wedding, then my $20 million secret went public and my son suddenly wanted a family reunion ***. She arrived at my modest wedding in a vibrant scarlet dress, mocking my life as a broke, desperate old woman. Just 3 days later, the news broke of a $20 million discovery on my property, and suddenly, my son was desperate for a family reconciliation dinner. I was 58, peering into the fractured reflection of a mirror in the back room of a humble community hall. The ivory suit I wore was a clearance find, chosen for its simple elegance. Then, I heard them, heels, sharp and rapid, growing louder. I knew that sound. It had echoed across my kitchen floor countless times, usually moments before Sienna's bright, brittle voice would dissect my every flaw. The door crashed open. "I cannot believe this," Sienna declared, her voice carrying across the small space. All 11 guests, seated in the simply arranged hall, a testament to my own efforts, as there was no planner, turned at once. She was clad in a defiant red dress. Red. A woman her age, dressed as if for a theatrical prom. It felt like a deliberate insult. My son, Liam, shuffled in behind her, his gaze fixed on the floor, a posture I'd become all too familiar with over the past 3 years. "It's barely been 3 years since Robert died," Sienna sneered, her eyes raking over my suit as if it had personally offended her. "You forget so quickly." My cheeks burned. Pastor Miller, a kind retired minister who had agreed to officiate for a small fee and a thank you note, froze, his small book half open. "I hope Julian isn't after your money," Sienna scoffed, then let out a laugh devoid of humor. "There's nothing to gain from a broke old woman like you." She pulled out her phone, holding it up. I heard the artificial click of a camera shutter, a sound that landed in my chest like a real blow. "This is going straight to social media," she announced, already tapping away. "My friends are never going to believe this absolute circus." I turned to Liam. To be truthful, my gaze wasn't one of anger. It was the look you give someone you still desperately hope might, somewhere deep down, rise to your defense. Say something, Liam. Please, he continued to stare at the floor. I bent down, placed my grocery store carnation bouquet, a $12 arrangement, onto the folding chair beside me. Then, I reached for Julian's hand. "We're leaving," I stated. But to truly understand, I need to rewind and explain those 3 intervening years. My beloved husband, Robert, passed away on a Tuesday in March, just 4 months after his diagnosis. He was 61. Our hospital room smelled of antiseptic and forgotten flowers. We had been married for 34 years. For most of that time, he'd run a small auto parts shop in Silver Creek County, Texas. When he left me, he'd provided a paid-off home, a modest life insurance payout that barely covered the funeral, and 640 acres of arid scrubland beyond the county line. His grandfather had purchased it in the 1950s for next to nothing, and for 6 decades, everyone, Robert, myself, even the county assessor, had dismissed it as utterly worthless. For 3 years after Robert's death, I subsisted on $400 a month from Social Security survivor benefits, after Medicare premiums. I even started having my blood pressure medication to make it last longer. I told myself I was managing. I told Liam I was fine on the rare occasions he called. Liam and Sienna had married 8 months before Robert died. I initially liked Sienna, or perhaps I wanted to like her, which, at 55 with a rarely calling son, can feel like the same thing. She was sharp, ambitious, the kind of woman who always knew the right restaurant and the appropriate tip. It took me far too long to realize that her sharpness had an edge, and that edge was perpetually aimed at me. The first hint of trouble was subtle. 6 months after Robert's funeral, I mentioned, not asking for help, merely stating, that I was a little behind on property taxes for the house. Sienna laughed, not unkindly perhaps, but dismissively. "Elara, you truly need to learn how to budget. It's not that difficult." Liam remained silent. I paid the taxes late, incurring a penalty, by selling Robert's tools. The request for a loan came 18 months later. Liam actually called, which surprised me enough to almost bring tears to my eyes just hearing his voice. He asked if I could help with a down payment on a house. $80,000. "It's an investment, Mom," he'd promised. We'll pay you back within the year. I didn't have $80,000. What I had was a small certificate of deposit that Robert and I had been building towards, someday, for 20 years, intended for emergencies, meant, though neither of us ever spoke it aloud, for whatever came when one of us passed first. I cashed it out and wired the money the very same week. That was 4 years ago. I never saw a single payment. Each time I brought it up, gently, always gently, because I was so terrified of losing the only thread of connection I had left with my son, Sienna had an excuse. The market, the renovations. Things are tight right now, Elara. You understand? Liam would simply nod along, his eyes drifting somewhere over my shoulder. I told myself it was nothing. Family helps family. That's what I kept telling myself, right up until the night Sienna strode into my wedding in a red dress and called it a circus. I met Julian Ramirez at the pharmacy, of all places. We were both standing at the counter, both doing that internal calculation as the cashier rang up our prescriptions, trying to guess the total before she even spoke it. Mine was $43. His was $61. He glanced at his total, then at mine, and deadpanned, "We should start a support group." I laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in longer than I cared to admit. Julian was 63, a retired oil engineer, having spent 31 years with a company out of Midland before seeking a quieter life. That largely involved restoring an old truck and reading more books than any single person ought to. He had lost his wife to cancer 5 years before I lost Robert. We started with coffee, then dinner. And almost 2 years later, here we were, in a community hall with folding chairs, about to be married in front of 11 people who genuinely wanted to be there, until Sienna showed up to make it 12. We didn't go back to my house that night. I couldn't. Not with my suit still half on, my hands trembling so violently I couldn't manage the zipper, and Julian having to help me. Neither of us spoke for a long time. We went to his apartment instead. He brewed chamomile tea, letting it steep longer than recommended, just the way I liked it. He'd learned that about me without me ever saying a word. He didn't speak for a while, just sat beside me on the couch, letting me sob into his shoulder until my face ached. "This marriage doesn't need a ceremony," he finally said, his voice low and steady, a stark contrast, I realized, to every other voice I'd heard that day. "Tomorrow, we'll go to the courthouse, just us. Nobody else gets a vote on this." I wanted to say I felt better immediately. I didn't. I felt 58, humiliated, and utterly exhausted. But I did feel something else, a flicker beneath all that despair. Something I hadn't felt in 3 years. I felt like someone was finally on my side. 2 days later, on Monday, Julian and I were enjoying coffee on his back porch when he became quiet in a way I'd learned to pay attention to. "Elara," he began slowly, "that land Robert's family owned beyond the county line, the 640 acres, the useless scrubland?" I finished. "What about it?" "There have been whispers," he said. "People I used to work with, mostly retired now, still talk. Geological survey crews have been out that way for the past few months. Test drilling, apparently, on some of the old, unclaimed, and family-owned parcels that nobody thought were worth anything." I laughed, a genuine laugh, the first since the wedding debacle. "Julian, I've driven past that land my entire married life. It's rock and dirt and one half-dead mesquite tree. There's nothing out there. Robert's grandfather was probably swindled buying it. That's the family joke." Julian didn't laugh. "Geology doesn't care about family jokes, Elara. I spent 31 years interpreting formations. Some of the most productive shale plays in the country sit under land everyone called worthless for 100 years, right up until someone had the equipment to access it." I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I entirely believed him, but because a small, stubborn part of me, the part that had spent 3 years splitting blood pressure pills in half, desperately wanted to. Wednesday morning, a knock came at Julian's door at 9:15 a.m. A man in a gray suit, holding a leather folio, introduced himself as Mr. Alistair Reed, an attorney representing Viridian Energy Solutions, a mineral rights acquisition firm. He had a folder, and within it, a map with my land, Robert's land, our land, outlined in red. "Mrs. Ramirez," he began, then caught himself. "My apologies. I understand the marriage was recent. Mrs. Whitfield, I should say, under your previous name. It's fine, I managed, my hands already trembling. What is this about? We've completed a confirmation survey on the parcel registered under the estate of Robert Whitfield, he explained, opening the folder. Combined with three-dimensional seismic data and 2 confirmation wells drilled on adjacent leased parcels, our geologists have confirmed commercially recoverable oil deposits beneath your property. He paused. Exceptional quality, low sulfur, what's known as sweet crude, which commands a premium. He turned the folder toward me. Our initial estimate of the total recoverable value of the reserves under your 640 acres is approximately $20 million. The room spun. I mean that literally. I had to quickly sit down in Julian's kitchen chair, lowering my head for a moment as the edges of my vision grayed. $20 million. Me. The woman living on $400 a month. The woman who, 2 days ago, had been publicly called broke in a red dress before 11 witnesses. I'd like to verify this through my own counsel, I heard myself say, my voice not quite my own. Julian, standing behind me with a hand on my shoulder, looked surprised, a good kind of surprise, at how steady the words came out. Mr. Reed smiled, as if he'd anticipated the request and even approved. Of course, Mrs. Whitfield. That's exactly what I'd recommend. I called Evelyn Harding that afternoon. Evelyn had been my closest friend for over 20 years. We'd worked together at the school district before my retirement, she in the front office, I in the library, and Evelyn was, without question, the only person I trusted completely. She arrived within the hour, sat me down, and made me repeat the figure aloud 3 times before she believed it herself. How shameless, Evelyn said after I'd recounted the wedding ordeal, a story I hadn't shared until then, too embarrassed, and then about Mr. Reed, in that specific order. In hindsight, a strange sequence for a story, but precisely how it unfolded. 3 days after humiliating you in front of strangers, and now this. It's not connected, I argued. The land discovery has nothing to do with them. I know that, Evelyn replied. But they don't know that you know it's not connected. Elara, she leaned forward, has Liam called you since the wedding? No, I admitted. He will, Evelyn predicted. Give it 3 days, maybe less. She was correct to the exact day. The news broke Thursday morning. By Thursday, the story was everywhere locally. A small item initially, Harmony County landowner sits on potential $20 million oil reserve, featuring my name, an aerial photo of my 640 acres circled in red, and a quote from Viridian Energy's PR department about pending negotiations. By Thursday evening, 3 different news vans had visited my old house, the one I'd shared with Robert, the one I still technically owned, though I'd been staying mostly at Julian's. A reporter named Ms. Lena Torres, who covered business and energy for the regional paper and, I would later learn, had 11 years on that beat, left a voicemail requesting an interview. And at 6:47 p.m. Thursday, my phone buzzed with a text from Liam, Mom, I saw the news. We need to talk. Reconciliation dinner tomorrow, 8 p.m. full family. I love you. I read it 4 times. I love you. 2 words I genuinely could not recall him last speaking to me. Not at Robert's funeral. Certainly not at the wedding 3 days ago. I tried to remember, and the honest answer was, I couldn't place it. Years. Arriving precisely 3 days after $20 million hit the headlines. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from grief. It was something colder, something that had been quietly festering under 3 years of $400 months and split pills. And things are tight right now, Mom, finally gaining room to stand up. How shameless, Evelyn repeated when I showed her the text, and this time, there was no softness in her voice at all. 3 days, Elara. 3. I'm going, I stated. Evelyn looked at me for a long moment. Okay, she said slowly, but not empty-handed. Friday morning, Evelyn arrived at Julian's apartment with a manila folder so thick that the rubber band encircling it had left deep grooves in the cardboard. I started keeping this 2 years ago, she said, placing it on the table as if it held significant weight. After the loan. I had a feeling, Elara. I'm sorry I never showed you. I didn't want to be the friend who's always saying, "I told you so," about your own son. But I kept everything. Inside, screenshots, dozens of them. Texts from Sienna spanning 2 years, photographed off my own phone on nights I'd stayed at Evelyn's and left it charging. Evelyn admitted, a little guiltily, that she'd started photographing things she saw on my screen when notifications popped up, because she didn't trust what she was seeing. Sienna to Liam, 14 months ago, your mom called again. Can you tell her we're busy? She's so needy since your dad died. It's honestly draining. Sienna to a friend, 9 months ago, with a screenshot of me at a family barbecue, the resident burden has arrived. LOL. Send help. Sienna to Liam, 5 months ago, the loan. Just tell her we're still figuring it out. She's not going to actually do anything about it. She never does. There was a printed copy of Sienna's social media post from 3 days ago, the one she typed that night at my wedding entrance. Some people have no self-awareness. A 58-year-old playing dress up like it's prom. Meanwhile, we're all just sitting here like, ma'am, 41 comments. Evelyn had screenshotted every single one before Sienna predictably deleted the post 22 hours later, around the time the oil story broke, I noted. And at the bottom of the folder, the loan documents, the original wire transfer confirmation for $80,000, dated 4 years and 2 months prior. A simple, one-page loan agreement. Evelyn had insisted I get at least that much in writing 4 years ago, and thank goodness I'd listened. It bore Liam's signature, stated terms of repayment within 12 months, and contained a notation in my own handwriting from a year ago, 0 payments received. Evelyn had taken that one-page agreement to a paralegal friend who connected us to Miss Harper Vance, a consumer finance attorney with 19 years of experience in Silver Creek and Reeves counties. She had done the math, $80,000 principal, 4 years overdue at the modest 5% interest rate written into the original agreement, compounded, came to $93,400, give or take. She drew up a formal demand letter, Evelyn said, sliding it across. 30 days to pay in full, or she files for a lien against the house. Their house. The one the $80,000 had bought. I sat there for a long time, watching it all laid out on Julian's kitchen table. 2 years of calculated cruelty documented in screenshots and timestamps. 4 years of a debt nobody ever intended to repay. There's one more thing, I said quietly. I need to update my will. Miss Harper Vance met with me that same afternoon, squeezing me in between 2 other appointments because, as she put it, Elara, if there's a $20 million mineral rights deal in play, this cannot wait until Monday. We drafted it together, a new will, replacing the old one, which had left everything, the house, and yes, the land, to Liam. The new one named Julian and a scholarship fund Ms. Vance helped me establish that same week for foster children in Silver Creek County. The kind of fund Robert and I had always dreamed of starting someday but never had the money for. Liam and Sienna's names appeared nowhere in it. That night, Julian and I drove to Liam and Sienna's house, the house that $80,000 of my retirement savings had bought. We walked into a scene of candlelight, fine china, and the rich aroma of pot roast. Pot roast. Robert's recipe. Sienna had made it, or had someone make it, and the smell hit me harder than anything else that night. Harder than the red dress, harder than the headlines. It smelled like Sunday dinners 30 years ago, like a kitchen I used to belong in. Sienna greeted us at the door, radiant in emerald green, all teeth and charm. Elara, congratulations on your marriage. She air-kissed both my cheeks, as if Tuesday had never happened. Liam rose from the table and raised his glass before we'd even sat down. To family, he announced, his voice imbued with that performative warmth I now recognized, having read 2 years of his wife's texts about me, as exactly that, a performance. To leaving misunderstandings behind. I didn't raise my glass. I sat down. Julian sat beside me, quiet, solid, his hand resting on the table near mine, not holding it, just close, in case I needed it. You saw the news, I stated, flatly. Not a question. Liam's smile flickered, just at the edges. Mom, 3 days, I said. 3 days, Liam. Tuesday, you stood there while your wife called me a broke old woman doing a pathetic circus act, and you said nothing. Thursday, $20 million made the news. Friday, tonight, I receive a text that says, I love you, for the first time since I can remember. An invitation to a reconciliation dinner with the good China. I let that sink in. How convenient. That's not fair, Liam said, his voice cracking slightly, the same crack I remembered from when he was 9 and caught lying about homework. Mom, that's not. We've wanted to fix things for a long time. This isn't about. I opened the folder. I didn't say anything dramatic. I simply began laying things out, one at a time, exactly as Miss Vance had instructed me, methodical, calm, documented. First, the printout of Sienna's deleted post, with all 41 comments still attached, including 3 from people sitting at this very table whose names I recognized from Sienna's side of the family. Sienna's face changed first. I watched it happen in real time, her bright hostess smile sliding sideways into something tighter, something with no give left in it. Then the texts. The resident burden has arrived. She's not going to actually do anything about it. She never does. This is private. Sienna snapped, standing up so abruptly her chair scraped hard against the floor. This is, you can't just, I can, I said. I did. Then I slid the loan agreement across the table. Liam's signature, the wire confirmation, the line in my own handwriting, 0 payments received, updated quietly every few months for 4 years. The way you keep a record of something you're too afraid to act on. $80,000, I said. 0 payments in 4 years. The CD your father and I spent 20 years saving for an emergency, Liam, for exactly this kind of situation. And I gave it to you, and you bought this house with it. I looked around the dining room, the chandelier, the marble counters I could see through the kitchen doorway. While I split my blood pressure pills in half because I couldn't afford a full bottle. Liam's hands were shaking now, holding the loan agreement, staring at his own signature like he didn't recognize it. Ms. Vance's demand letter went down next, the official one on actual letterhead. $93,400 with interest, as outlined in the agreement you signed. 30 days, or my attorney files for a lien against this house. This is extortion. Sienna's voice hit a register I'd never heard from her, high, ragged, reeling for the first time all night. This is a contract, I said. Yours, with my son's signature on it. I'm sure your lawyer can confirm that's how those work. And then last, the will. I debated all afternoon whether to bring it, whether it was cruel. In the end, I decided that cruel had been defined for me 3 days ago in a community hall by a woman in a red dress, and that this quiet stack of paper, didn't come close. My new will, I said, sliding it across last of all. Effective as of yesterday. I think you should both read it. Sienna snatched it before Liam could. I watched her eyes dart down the page, fast at first, then slower, then stop completely on a line near the bottom. Her face, already pale, drained further until she looked almost gray under the chandelier light. You can't disinherit your own son, she said, but it came out smaller than anything she'd uttered all night. I can, I said, standing up. Julian stood with me. And I did. Liam didn't argue. He didn't say anything for a long moment. He just sat there, the will before him, the loan agreement still in his other hand, staring at some point on the tablecloth that wasn't anything at all. All this time, he finally said, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. I thought when you died, I'd finally have something, enough to fix everything, and his voice broke for real this time. For 1/2 of 1 second, I felt the old ache, the mother ache, the one that doesn't entirely vanish no matter what. I just kept waiting for it. Family doesn't abandon, I said. I closed the folder. My hands, I noticed, had finally stopped shaking. Family doesn't humiliate someone in front of strangers and then show up with pot roast 3 days later because the numbers changed. You decided what kind of relationship we were going to have the moment you stood there on Tuesday and said nothing. Behind me, I heard Sienna's voice rising, sharp, furious, already turning. On Liam, already speaking his name like an accusation. You told me she'd never actually update the will. You said she'd never. I didn't look back. Julian opened the door for me, and the cold night air felt like the cleanest thing I'd breathed in 3 years. The deal with Viridian Energy Solutions closed 4 months ago. $20.4 million in the end, slightly more than the initial estimate, paid out as a lump sum for the mineral rights, plus a smaller, ongoing royalty on production. Ms. Harper Vance handled the negotiation alongside a Houston firm she brought in that specialized in mineral rights transactions. Between them, they secured better terms than Mr. Reed's first offer by almost $2 million. The scholarship fund, which after some discussion Julian suggested we name the Robert Whitfield Foundation for Foster Youth, because, as he pointed out, it should carry the name of the man whose family had unknowingly sat on this for 70 years, made its first round of awards last month. 11 students. The same number of people who watched Sienna call my wedding a circus 3 days before any of this began. I noticed that, and I allowed myself to quietly savor the observation. Liam and Sienna are divorcing. I heard this from Evelyn, who heard it from someone at the gym, the way these things travel in a small county. I felt, and I want to be honest about this because I think honesty matters more than a clean ending, almost nothing. Not satisfaction exactly, nor sadness. Just a quiet sense of calm that, I believe, only settles in once you've stopped waiting for someone to be different than they've already shown you they are. Liam has reached out twice since that night. Both times, just texts. The first said, "I'm sorry, Mom." I didn't answer. The second, a month later, read, "I understand if you can't forgive me. I just wanted you to know I'm in therapy now. Actually trying." I read that one a few times. I haven't answered that one either. Not yet. Ms. Vance tells me that's allowed. Evelyn tells me there's no deadline on it. Julian simply holds my hand and doesn't push either way, which is, I've come to learn, exactly the kind of man he is.